Do you have to give up fresh farmers market produce when it's getting cold out? Not in Chappaqua, where the Chappaqua Farmers Market is beginning its second year indoors at the Church of St. Mary the Virgin. Co-founder of the market, Priscilla Sorensen, tells us about the variety of products you'll find indoors and more.
Well, I'll give you a little bit of the background. It did take a lot of work. The idea came initially from our town supervisor, Barbara Gerard, who wanted a green market in Chappaqua because she liked farmers markets and thought it would help bring Chappaqua together, and create a sense of community. So she proposed the idea to a town board called the Sustainability Advisory Board. And one of the members, Nancy Lyman, was there, and she took on the project. She called me because I've had a long-standing interest in farmers markets, and she knew that. And together we started the planning of the market. This was about 2 years ago. During our planning, we decided to have sort of a pilot test market, and this was the fall of 2010. We had someone who brought us some vendors. We decided to start small and test the waters and see what the demand would be, and we set up with the town's sponsorship at the train station in Chappaqua. And it was well received. We found that people liked coming out and seeing their neighbors and talking. They liked the fresh produce. We learned a lot in that market. We learned some lessons of things we didn't do right, and we learned some things we did do right, but primarily we learned that there was a place for a farmer's market in Chappaqua.
Speaking of vendors, what kind of criteria are used to select vendors? Do you have a wide variety of vendors to choose from?
Well, one of the first things we had to do was develop, we call it our mission, because you have to limit what your vendors are. Are you getting produce from California and Florida or New York? And what we really decided is that we wanted to be a local market, meaning that our produce and our vendors, because we do sell prepared food, would come from within a radius, and we decided a 200-mile radius of our town would give us enough farmers, some of who are upstate, but they're still local enough that there's not long transportation times to come to the market, so that there's less of a carbon footprint in bringing the food there, and it's also fresher. So our goal was to really bring fresh produce and connect it with people, with shoppers, and also to allow them to interact and to talk to the people who are growing and selling their food.
So you began a transition from outdoor to indoor. That happened a year ago. What was behind that?
Well, it was almost an accident, but at the end of our pilot market, we sort of gathered ourselves and refined what we wanted to do, and what we decided is we did need a professional manager to come in and make contacts with vendors and farmers. We were community organizers and volunteers. At this point, we had formed a nonprofit entity to do this. We're not a profit-seeking venture, but we knew we needed professional help in bringing the farmers. So we shopped at local farmers markets, and we went up to Hastings Farmers Market, Nancy Lyman and I, and we found it to be a really unique blend of farmers and vendors and knife sharpener entertainment. We really liked the feel of that market, and the manager, a woman named Pascal Ladraulic, had been running it for a number of years, and we just, she had the personality and she had the interest in local, fresh, good food that we were really seeking.
My name is Pascal Ladraulic, and I'm the director of the Chappaqua Farmers Markets. I also run 2 other farmers markets in the area, one in Hastings and one in Irvington.
She'd also been a food writer, so she had a passion for food that we really liked to see. So we invited Pascal to Chappaqua, and we sat down one day and we talked about opening the market in presumably the spring. And this was in the late fall that we had our conversation. It was actually in November. And while we were speaking, she said, well, did you ever think of a winter's market? And we said, well, no, we didn't. And she said, did you know that many of the farmers today have greenhouses and they grow produce indoors, and you can get fresh produce indoors? And we were intrigued, so we actually took a walk down the street and saying, we do want to support the town of Chappaqua. That was one of our missions, is to keep the downtown lively, and where could we be located? And one of the buildings was St. Mary's Church Rectory Hall, which I knew from having a nursery schooler there long ago. And we looked at the building, and Pascal thought the location was great. And as you know, later as we came to you and asked for space, that became our winter home and really the opening venue of the Chappaqua Farmers Market as a new nonprofit entity.
So you have vendors in the summer, vendors in the winter. Is there any difference?
Yes, in the winter you don't have as much fresh food. We have one or two farmers who grow crops indoors. One of the, having an interest in sustainable type of agriculture, we don't want an indoor farmer who uses fossil fuels to heat greenhouses, but there are farmers now who use solar panels, which generate a lot of heat. They grow crops. And that's, so we do have vegetables in the winter, but not as many as in the summer. So in the summer we'll have, 4 or 5 people with fresh produce. In the winter we have fewer. But we do still have fruit. Apples are stored through the winter. Pears go through the late fall. And it's great to get fresh local apples through the winter. We supplement this in the winter and in the summer with prepared food vendors. We also have meats and cheese and fish vendor, Pura Vida Fish, who's local from Long Island, and a number of baked goods vendors, and then some specialty foods, hummus, pies. We have a variety of prepared foods that bring in sort of a unique flavor to our market, indoor and outdoor.
You mentioned that you met Pascal up at the Hastings food market, farmers market. So there are other markets around in the area. Is there anything that makes Chappaqua market different or unique?
Well, we have a knife sharpener for one, which Hastings also has, and Pascal brought in, but it's unique.
I got into this business when I used to have family and friends bring me knives to sharpen for them. I used to be a butcher, so I always like to keep a nice edge on my knives, and my family and my friends would reap the same benefits. And one day my wife said, you should go out and do this on the side and see if you can make any money doing it. And I've been doing it ever since. And I do 2 markets. I do one here in Chappaqua, and I do another one in Hastings, New York, every other Saturday. And it's been going really well. People sometimes, the thing that I hear the most here is, I forgot my knives.
The question arose early in our planning. Why do we need another market in Chappaqua? And I guess going back to our creation, we're not just creating a farmer's market, we're trying to create and foster a sense of community in our town and to really have a gathering place for people and for community.
Pascal Ladrella, manager of the market, echoes the point about community.
I ended up running the farmers market in my hometown because I felt like it was a good opportunity to create a sense of community, and I have found that really, in addition to coming to the market for vegetables and fruit, people come to the market because they can rub elbows with their neighbors and have conversations that they don't really have time to have during the week. And I find that it is a huge social binder, and it's a wonderful opportunity for people to connect, and over food, which is always a beautiful thing. So that's the one aspect of farmers markets that gets overlooked often, and I feel it's starting to happen in Chappaqua, where people are coming because it's more than just about the food, and that to me is really the true success of a good farmers market, if it can accomplish that.
We're unique in that we encourage involvement of all community groups and even retailers in town. Because there is always the concern that a farmer's market is going to impact some retailers by having competition, and the town's view and our view really is that by creating an event in town, we're hoping to create more life downtown and help retailers. So in our winter market, we have a market table at the entrance, and we invite retailers to set up a little display of their store or what they're selling so that they get some publicity.
Well, that's nice. That brings to mind one of the criticisms I often hear about farmers market and local grown produce is that it's way more expensive than what you can find in your local supermarket or grocery store. How do you respond to that kind of criticism?
Well, that's a very good question, and it's a common criticism of farmers markets. You do pay more. I don't know if it's always way more because we've done comparison, but it's somewhat more, and our trade-off, we think, is that you're getting fresher goods. A tomato that travels 2 hours, is picked in the morning and travels 2 hours to market is going to taste different than the one that came from California that might be at the grocery store up the street. So we're able to offer a different, unique product, which is somewhat more expensive. In our early pilot program, we did face criticism that our produce was expensive, and we looked at that and we talked to our manager and said one of our goals is to really bring the price, if not equal to a supermarket, closer. So what we did, we were able to find some vendors who have a price point that is lower than others. One is maybe does not have an organic certification, which is an extra cost to a farmer, and that produce is going to be more costly. But we have someone who produces with similar type of organic methods. They're just not certified. So that farmer can sell at a lower price point. And we think from the feedback from the market that we got in the outdoor season this year that we really achieved a good balance. It's not going to serve everybody, we know that, but we think we had a pretty good balance of prices and offerings.
Community within community within community.
That's what it's all about. And actually one other important thing I should mention is that we had business sponsorship in a really significant way. Citibank paid for our banner, which sits over Main Street. A number of local realtors and Nicolaus Insurance Agency helped us pay for tables and cafe chairs so that our outdoor venue could be a place where people gather. And right now we're trying to fit into the church space a few of those tables so that people can gather and talk and visit with each other.
In the summer, you're at the train station, a lot of space to spread out. And in the winter, you're in the parish hall at the Church of St. Mary the Virgin, which is a little tiny space. What are, that apparently is a challenge to start out with. What are some of the other challenges of moving from a summer market to an indoor winter's market?
Well, the space is the biggest challenge because one of the things that has happened over the past year as we've operated is we've grown, and the number of vendors that we have has grown from 12 at our initial market to 20 to probably 25 in our outdoor market. So to address the space challenge, we're creative with keeping our vendors close together, and we also rotate vendors. Another challenge with winter is the weather. You know, it's not just us getting out of our driveways and shoppers coming, which is one challenge, but the farmers, you know, from coming 3 hours, some of them drive from upstate. They pack their trucks at 3 in the morning, and on a snowy day they're driving 3 hours or more to get to market, and then if the weather's bad they have to drive back. So there's a lot of challenges in the winter market. Last year, for our inaugural year, was probably the roughest winter we've had in a long time. And the fact that we did well and people were patient when a vendor couldn't show up, you know, we told people and they were understanding, shows that people are learning that we're not just something that can open up without any planning. It does take, you know, a lot of work from the farmers and organizers to put this together in the winter.
That's Chappaqua Indoor Farmers Market. Fresh food year-round.
And they are good. But that's it.